morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice Radio. So today, we're going to be taking a look at another one of these lovely new Detective Pikachu cards. We're taking a little bit of a look at Ludicolo. I like Ludicolo. Now, personally, I'm just a Ludicolo fan in general. He is ludicrously cool. Does that work? He looks moderately terrifying in the Detective Pikachu film, but I'm all in, ladies and gentlemen. And what I will say, right, he's clearly about as wide as the aisle. That makes him a terrible choice for a waiter. If there were people sitting on those stools and in those booths, that would not be going well. Does ask the question, who's he actually delivering food to? Let's assume it's somebody just off screen. But anyway, Ludicolo. Is this card any good? I mean, look, I'm giving it its own video, so I clearly like it a little bit. 140 HP is all right. I will say it's a little bit low, certainly when you consider the stuff like Empoleon and Dragonite are sitting there at 150, and Dragonite was in Sun and Moon base. The retreat cost of 3 is super annoying because it means you don't have access to buff padding, boo, etc. And the weakness to fire is not ideal because Blacephalon's really good, and as I've been explaining in a bunch of videos recently, when the next set comes and we get cards like Welder, attach 2 fire energy to one of your Pokemon and draw 3 cards, fire decks are going to get nuts good, and frankly, having fire weakness, no, not good. You are a grass Pokemon, that means you've got some healing options like Life Forest Prism Star and Jamin, more on those in a moment. And it means you're hitting weakness on stuff like Lycanroc, so it could be worse, ladies and gentlemen. It could be worse. But what does it actually do? Well, it's got an attack that I like very much indeed. Once during your turn, before you attack, you may heal 30 damage from one of your Pokemon. And what is amazing about this, it does not say Ludicolo must be active, and it does not say that the Pokemon you are healing must be active. And both of those make an absolutely gigantic difference. It is just a free potion every turn. Every single turn, you just get to play another potion. No ifs, no buts, no maybes, just free potion. I cannot overstate how awesome this is. Now, we'll get to a bit of detail in a moment about how awesome this is, but at this stage, I do need to remind you to Stage 2. Stage 2 is not ideal, ladies and gentlemen. Stage 2 is far from ideal. And look, we've got a Alolan Ninetales at the moment. When you evolve up into it, you get to search for any 2 item cards. One of them's going to be Rare Candy. And it evolves from Alolan Vulpix, which searches out your Pokemon. And the combination of these 2 cards has made Stage 2s more viable than they've been for a while. But you're still a Stage 2. The healing, great. I don't think anyone's going to argue against this. The way I like to look at abilities is, if it would see play on a basic Pokemon, it's a decent ability. But there's then that separate question of, okay, it would be good on a basic, but is it actually good enough to see play on a Stage 2? And this reminds me very much of another Ludicolo that said yes to the first and no to the second. The ability was great, or it would be on a basic, but it was never good enough to see play as a Stage 2. Bearing in mind, right, I bought a playset of these Ludicolo, and I tested it. Oh my goodness, I tested it. Incidentally, I never found a good deck list. Not even close. It's the one whose ability was just Pokemon Catcher. Once during your turn, flip a coin. If heads, drag a Pokemon from your opponent's bench into the active. And weirdly enough, I actually like both of these together, because what you can do is drag a bunch of bench sitters like Makago into the active every turn, run your opponent out of switching options, and then just be healing. Use one Ludicolo to heal, and the other Ludicolo to just keep dragging a Pokemon in the active until your opponent runs out of stuff to do and loses. Depressingly, that was in Ancient Origins, so it has rotated out. We do actually have a legal Ludicolo around at the moment. It is the one that came around in Celestial Storm, reprint of an old one essentially, Ability says you can draw a card, and then the attack for Water Double Colorless does 70 plus 10 more for each other Pokemon in play. With 2 full benches, that's 190, which ain't to be sniffed at. And now all of a sudden you've got healing as well. The only real question for me with Ludicolo is, are you going to play this as a tech? Bearing in mind it's a Stage 2. And Sceptile has seen play as a tech Stage 2. Stage 2 grass Pokemon, people play it. But the thing is, it has immunity to Ultra Beasts like Blacephalon and Buzzwole. That's probably a step above, well, it's not probably, it's definitely a step above in terms of good ability. And then we get into the question of, do you really need the healing here? I mean, look, clearly the healing's good, but Life Forest Prism Star will heal 60 damage and special conditions. It's a Prism Star Stadium, so you only get 1. And then after that, it's kind of gone away forever, and that's a little bit sad. But for the time being, you've got it. And the Shaman from Lost Thunder is seeing a bunch of play. I mean, Celebi and Venusaur is seeing play as a bit of a tank deck, as a you can't KO me tee-hee-hee kind of deck. And that uses the Shaman from Lost Thunder to heal. And the Shaman from Lost Thunder only heals 20 damage a turn. And it only heals from the active. This is 30 damage from any Pokemon. So you can retreat a damaged Celebi and Venusaur, and then be healing it on the bench while you're attacking with another one, whereas with Shaman, you've got to have it in the active or you don't get the healing. So look, I like this ability. If it was on a basic, it would be broken. It's on a Stage 2. If you want to go full healing, I think you've got to consider this. And if you've got 2 Ludicolo out, you're healing 60, 3, 90, 4, 120, etc. But the fact that you're a Stage 2 is going to hurt. Having said that, maybe you play the other Ludicolo, bit of a mix of water and grass, you know, maybe. As for the attack, 1 grass, 2 colorless energy, 70 damage, and switch it with one of your bench. Incidentally, it is a switch with your bench. It is not you may switch with one of your bench. So you have no choice here. You must do the switching. You don't get to say, oh, I'd rather leave him in the active. No, ladies and gentlemen, no. But you could whack something like a Magikarp and Wailord in the active with 300 HP and then just sit there healing again and again. Heal that 30 every turn. If you've got a couple of Ludicolo out, you can kind of keep attacking and then healing 60 from Magikarp and Wailord every turn. Plus Life Forest Prism Star and maybe the odd Shaman. That could work. That could be kind of fun. Generally speaking, these hit-and-run decks need a wall Pokemon. Someone to jump in the active. Something like Mr. Mime GX that has immunity from a certain number of attack damage. Or something like Hooper, which has immunity from EX and GX attacks. Now, admittedly, none of these have a low enough retreat, and they were way better when Floatstone was a thing. But they're still viable. And just the other day, I showed you a new Weezing card that does 1 damage to each basic Pokemon between turns. So maybe you get some kind of hit-and-run deck here where you're healing with Ludicolo while spreading damage with Weezing. Maybe it's too awkward, but I think it's fun to have a roll with. The problem is we have hit-and-run Pokemon at the moment, and they tend to be basics for 1 energy. Hitmonchan, Deoxys, Tapu Koko. They're all basics, they all do it for a single energy attachment. This is a Stage 2 for 2 energy attachments. Because of double colorless, we can count it as 2 energy attachments, even though it's free energy. And that's the issue here. Now, interestingly enough, you can actually combine it with those other Pokemon and just have a hit-and-run deck. We don't have a good, unless my mind is skipping something here, we don't have a good grass-type hit-and-run Pokemon right now. So this can fit that. And we're left in this really awkward situation where I desperately want to like Ludicolo. And the ability is really nice. And the attack is kind of interesting. But it's just a little bit too awkward. And it's just a little bit too expensive. And I worry that's going to mean it never really sees any play. And that makes me a little bit sad. I like it and I want it to work, but is it really that much better than Shaman as a healing card? Is it really that much better than something like Hitmonchan as a hit and run card? I worry the answer's no, and that makes me really sad. So I'm giving this 3 Wassies, and I'm fully aware that that's probably a little bit generous, and it's probably not quite 3 Wassie good. And maybe I'm giving it a bump up because he's adorable, and he's bringing you his food and all of that. It's just, yeah, sorry Ludicolo. But hey ho, ladies and gentlemen, I would very much like to know what you think about this new Ludicolo. So please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. But please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, because we cover other games on that channel, and I think you might like a couple, Dave. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.